Next to me is the Cayenne Turbo GT, the fastest SUV in the world. With a Nürburgring time of just 7 minutes and 38 seconds, it reigns supreme over all SUVs. So why is it so expensive, and is it truly worth the money? Well, today we're gonna find out exactly that. Under the hood of the Turbo GT is a 4-liter twin turbocharged V8, making 631 horsepower and 626 pound-feet of torque. It's actually the same motor and transmission as the almighty Lamborghini Urus. Now, despite the fact that it has 10 horsepower less than the Urus and weighs 200 pounds more, Porsche's worked their magic, and somehow this is faster than the Lamborghini. In fact, this is the most powerful V8 Porsche has ever put in any vehicle. The naturally aspirated 918 Spyder, less power than this almighty V8. 0 to 60 happens in a brisk 2.8 seconds. I mean, that's supercar levels of speed in an SUV, and the quarter mile in 11.1. That's 0.2 of a second faster than the Lamborghini Urus. Now, I've got to give a huge shout out to Alpha One Motors in Austin, Texas for making this review possible. This car is actually available there now. I've got a link to their website as well as their Instagram. They also have an awesome inventory of other cars like a Pista, beautiful 675 LT Spyder. Make sure to check them out. The Turbo GT is all-wheel drive, except it's very rear-wheel drive biased. In fact, the torque split happens so fast due to the fact that they've added a liquid-cooled transfer case to make sure it can react as fast as possible on track. They have gone no expenses spared to make sure this can lap the track as fast as possible. The brakes on the Turbo GT are ridiculous. They measure 17.3 inches at the front, and the calipers have 10 pistons. Yes, that's right, not your 6-piston Brembos, 10 pistons. Now, the wheels are 22 inches. There's 5 different colors to choose from for the wheels, but the style is the same on all of them for the latest generation. The crazy part is, to get maximum grip, 285 section tires in the front, those are Pirelli P0 Corsas, and 315s, once again, supercar levels of tires in the back. To improve handling, the Turbo GT sits 0.7 inches lower to the ground than the Cayenne Turbo S does. It's also got multi-link suspension front and rear and all-wheel steering. That's right, the rear wheels can actually turn in the opposite direction of the fronts. This thing handles like an absolute beast. Now, I will say, I'm in love with the way this looks, minus the exhaust setup. But I can't really argue with Porsche engineers here because allegedly, this exhaust saves 40 pounds from the Cayenne Turbo S's. It's made of titanium. It's actually kind of cool now that I'm looking at it with those little blue accents there. And the rear diffuser is absolutely savage for an SUV. But here's something that you're unlikely to see on really any other vehicle. It's got 2 wings. One on the top here, mounted on the top of the roof, and then it has an active spoiler right here. You can manually put it up to this level. At 56 miles an hour, it extends even further, or you can put it back down to make it more subtle. The thing I love about this is it's the fastest SUV in the world, but it doesn't scream at you like a Lamborghini Urus. People would have no idea, of course, it's a nice Porsche, that this is a ridiculous machine. With a base price of $183,000, the Turbo GT isn't exactly cheap. Add some options and you're well over $200,000. But there's 2 amazing things about that. 1, it's still significantly cheaper than the Urus. And 2, these things hold their value so well that you could probably buy one, drive it for the next couple years, and sell it for effectively exactly what you bought it for. Porsches hold value extremely well, and the rarer they get, sometimes they even appreciate. Now, they did just come out with a new 2023 refresh. It's got a little more horsepower to compete with the Urus Performante, 650 horsepower, slightly different tachometer and dash, but effectively the same car. That one starts at 196 grand. The interior is absolutely covered in Alcantara. Everything from the seat inserts to the center console to the dash. Absolutely gorgeous. For some reason, Porsche calls it race tex, but it's Alcantara in everyone else's terminology. I really like the center console area. You'll notice they got rid of all those crazy buttons, and instead it's actually lights that are backlit. So when you turn the car off, you don't see any of these controls whatsoever. We've got a gorgeous display right here. It's touchscreen, works really, really well. Got to go into private mode, apparently. You can change anything from the drive mode, chassis height, sports exhaust. Listen to how loud it gets with the sports exhaust. Gets way louder. And then there's even ambient lighting colors that you can choose from. A variety of different ones. We're on lemon green right now. In case you weren't fully convinced that this is a full-fledged track beast, check out the paddles mounted behind the steering wheel, the crazy center-mounted tachometer with digital displays to the left and right. But look at this. We've got a drive mode selector here, normal mode, sport, sport plus, and individual. And then this button right here is the Sport Response button. If you click that, you get 20 seconds of extra boost and extra response so that you can pass cars on the track or on the freeway. Behind the wheel of the Turbo GT now, and I couldn't be more excited. I've wanted to review this vehicle for a very long time. It's just really hard to come by, honestly. I'm in normal mode, and it's honestly shocking how comfortable this SUV is. Having driven a lot of Porsche's performance cars, I know it's an SUV, I know it's supposed to be practical, but I figured it would be really, really harsh. In fact, the E63 AMG that I had, well, it's nowhere near as capable on track as this is. It had a much harsher suspension. So Porsche has worked absolute magic, unsurprising, making the suspension extremely comfortable, yet at the same time, when you put it into Sport or Sport Plus mode, it tightens up a bit and you get that full level of performance. 8-speed automatic ZF gearbox with paddles mounted behind the steering wheel. Let's go ahead and put it into Sport Plus mode and awaken this beast a little bit. I love the fact that you can shift the driving modes by this dial on the steering wheel itself. We're in normal mode right now. Flick it to the right one, that's Sport. One more time, Sport Plus, and you can hear that beautiful V8. Here we go. Wow, this thing is fast. 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds is no joke, but it's the acceleration after. It just keeps on pulling. And I don't know how they've gotten this 8-speed automatic to shift so quickly with downshifts. It actually feels almost as quick as a double clutch transmission, which is pretty darn impressive. It's not quite as loud as something like the Urus. It doesn't have as many cracks and bangs, so it's a little less showy. Obviously, you can add an exhaust to make it as loud as you want, but man, this thing is impressive. It's a classy amount of noise. It's not overly quiet. You can still hear that V8, which sounds absolutely fantastic, but it's not overbearing. It doesn't annoy you. And interestingly, when you start up the car, and you're just driving it around slowly, it's not loud at all. So you're not going to annoy your neighbors. You can pull out of the driveway super easily out of the garage, and it's not gonna wake everybody up. And then you start accelerating and it gets pretty awesome. That rear axle steering makes this feel so much more nimble. It's actually really impressive. It handles much more like a sedan, a very sporty sedan, like an M5 competition, than it does an SUV. That center of gravity feels really low, surprisingly so, for a vehicle of this size. Now, it does have a carbon fiber roof, but you are still fighting with a really large and relatively tall vehicle. So getting it to handle well is a serious engineering marvel, and Porsche has done it extremely well. I think the steering feels nicer than any other SUV that I've ever experienced. It feels a little bit more refined than the Urus, and because it's, man, I can't put a finger on it. It just feels like the whole car comes together better than the Urus. All the systems working together, the rear axle steering, the traction control, the Porsche suspension management, that multi-link suspension's fantastic. The gearbox is really awesome. It sounds good, and it's really comfortable. This has to be one of the best daily driver cars ever that you can also absolutely rip on back roads. The car is obviously very subdued on the outside compared to other vehicles this level of performance. I mean, the DBX, the Urus, etc. Cullinan's obviously not in the same category, but it is an expensive, big, flashy SUV. This blends performance and practicality in this subtle wolf in sheep's clothing that I absolutely love. But what also surprises me is, especially with the combination of leather and Alcantara, the interior feels even a little bit flashier than the exterior, and in the best way possible. Everything just looks and feels so high quality. I love that they got rid of all of those kind of silly buttons, and we've got screens here on the display that have nice little haptic feedback. It's actually really satisfying when you touch the center console. It feels nice. They must have spent so much money developing that perfect click. And then just visually, that tachometer is so beautiful. Now, on the newest generation one, I believe it's one curved display. It's like a 12.7-inch display. It doesn't have that actual analog tachometer. This one does, and I honestly prefer that. The Sport Chrono package also looks fantastic as well. All right, so let's flick it down into Sport Plus mode, do a couple more pulls, and finish off this review. I think this has got to be be the best SUV ever created. It's actually so flippin' awesome. Special thanks to Alpha One Motors for making this video possible. This vehicle's available there now, and it is absolutely pristine. It smells so nice in here. Something about the leather and the Alcantara, it smells rich. I feel richer just smelling the interior. I know that doesn't really make any sense, but trust me, if you sat in this thing and you bought one, you would understand. It's pretty awesome. All right, a couple more burbles. All right, guys, see you next video.